the founders' journeys are always a bumpy one. I don't know. There's always some good stories from those journeys. But yeah, so uh, back in my previous life, I'm from Colorado. Grew up in a small mountain town. I actually grew up in the town the show South Park was based off of. So we can kind of get into that later if you want. But some good stories from a lot of the characters based off my teachers growing up. And so I grew up in a small mountain town. Went to Boulder for college, did finance and accounting, and then that never really was in love with finance or accounting. And in 2015, I went back to code school. Those are just kind of started popping up everywhere, and I went to code school. And when I was there, I just happened to be going to school with a bunch of guys that were super into Bitcoin, and I didn't really get it. I was like, I don't really understand how this could be valuable, just kind of made up currency. And then my friends were so adamant about it being the future. I remember, I think I had $1,000 left in my bank account because I was saving for school. I had no money. I had, what, I had nothing left in my name. And they basically convinced me to spend my last $1,000 on Bitcoin. And I held Bitcoin for about 4 hours before that exchange was rugged, and I
Oh
lost it
man.
all. So I may have been the fastest rug pull in crypto history. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, why would I ever do this? And then so after that, I was like, I kind of had this really adverse reaction to crypto. But then a few months later, I went to an Ethereum meetup, and something about programmable smart contracts just really clicked for me. And I've just basically been crypto pilled ever since that moment. I just really felt like smart contracts and programmable money was really going to be the future. And so I've been really hooked ever since 2016. And after that, I went and worked at a small indie video game studio. But as much as I loved gaming, I always kind of felt this pull back to blockchain technology. And so I left there to go work at Shapeshift, which was one of the like original dexes. It wasn't technically a dex, but it kind of behaved as one. And so I did that for 3 years. But while I was at Shapeshift, I still had this, this pull for back into gaming. And I just felt like there was going to be so much opportunity with Web3 and gaming. And so in 2019, my brother and I started our first company, Arena, which was basically skilled based wagering for gaming. And this was right when Fortnite was getting big and PUBG was getting big. And so the platform basically would allow people to put money into smart contracts and then automatically pay out the winners. And that was really cool. I think that was just a factor, I think, being a little too early. It was pretty, crypto was still pretty tough in 2019. MetaMask was really like the only wallet provider. Most people still had never even heard of Ethereum. And there was just a lot of hurdles to like onboarding Web 2 to Web 3 at that point in time. Um, and so we did that for a few years. And then actually we ended up shutting down that company at like February basically February of this year. And which was tough. Shutting down a business is really hard. But then on the back end of that, I was just looking for a new job, and I actually was getting ready into Farcaster. And so my brother and I launched Farworld. A lot of it is a passion project, just wanting to like learn Farcaster, learn the technology, and honestly to pad my resume to apply for a job to go work at Farcaster. And we ended up launching Farworld and just wanted to do something really fun and creative, and it just like took off. And I think that was a moment of realization for us of like how cool frames were, how cool the open social network was going to be, and it really just inspired all these new ideas of things we wanted to build on an open social network. And so we've been Farworld since February, and then we just launched the Farcade, which is like one of our big visions that we've honestly had since February, and we've been building. We've probably built like 6 or 7 iterations of the Farcade before we finally got to this point where we're at now. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a long-winded background, but that's kind of how we got to today.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. And like you said, lots of ups and downs along the way, obviously. And like February couldn't have been fun shutting down, the
Yeah.
company that you've been working on for a few years. But then you fast forward, you know, only what, 10 months later, and you've got Farworld, which was really, did pretty well, I think, on Farcaster. I don't know, like these metrics or everything, but I know I was involved in playing for a while, and I've got
Yeah.
Farcade, which seems to have just like blown the roof off of things. So maybe we can talk briefly about Farworld before, spending some more time on Farcade. Just
Yeah.
in terms of like, that sounded like that was a passion project. It seemed to me to be like somewhat Pokemon inspired,
Yeah.
which was sort of a throwback to, some of my favorite games, like on like the original Game Boy and whatnot, like growing up. And so that was fun. And so, were there things from that? Like, it sounds like you were also sort of like working on Farcade even back then in parallel.
Yeah.
Was there like a specific itch that Farworld scratched, or like sort of, I mean, you mentioned it was sort of really just a side project where you weren't like necessarily starting a company. You were just looking to sort of like boost your credentials and try something interesting. And it ended up leading to, doing more building with Farcade and whatnot. But
Yeah.
how do you reflect on sort of the Farworld launch? Is that something at this point that you're interested in, like sort of building out further in parallel to Farcade stuff, or more just
Yeah.
treating it as like something that's, you put out there, you're happy you did it, but, kind of keep it where it is for now?
No, so we're still in the middle we're probably launching like our biggest update since we created the game uh early next year. So we're still working on it. It's still very much like a very big passion of ours. Like we still really love that game. The community is awesome and it's been super, super fun to build. And I think that a lot of the reason we pursued it too was like it overlapped a lot of our interests. You know, it was gaming. It was on this open social network. I thought we like when Frames launched, we thought Frames were just like the coolest thing ever, and so we really wanted to build a game that leaned into using Frames as not only just like a distribution discovery tool, but also like just the core gameplay mechanics. And so Farworld was like this moment for me where we always wanted to build games, but I think me and my brother always convinced ourselves that's like, oh, we didn't work at Nintendo or Activision. Like we almost felt like we weren't allowed to make games for a really long time. Like it felt like we always were like, we need more experience, we need like, better credentials. It almost felt like we were just like we didn't have the pedigree to create games. And I think Farworld was this moment for us where we're like, you know what? Like, screw that. Like, this is something that we want to do. Like, who cares if like we don't have the experience? Let's just like make something that we think is fun, and maybe other people will think is fun too. And people did think it was fun, and so that was like a really great moment for us where we felt like we overcame this like mental barrier of like our passion that we wanted to pursue for such a long time. And that was also a lot of the reason my brother and I both went back to code school was to make games one day. And so uh it was definitely Farworld. Just yeah, I'll always have a ton of love for Farworld just because I think it was like very really it's like changed my life in a lot of ways. And then the Farcade is really trying to like expand on a lot of stuff that we felt like we've learned from this year, which is like building on top of social networks, like how powerful like a distribution discovery tool that is. Building like mini games, how fun like I think like mini games and like these hyper casual mobile games like really lean into like our current lifestyle and like how much ADD we have and how little time we have for anything. I think it really leans into like the current gaming ecosystem. And also like with the Farcade studio, with this AI studio, we really want to we want to like empower people to have that same feeling we had, which is like, if you think you have like a creative, like fun game idea, like go build it. Like the Farcade is going to be an amazing place to like build and launch your own games with like very little engineering experience. And ideally in the near future, no engineering experience. It's just entirely AI prompts. And so that's something that we're really excited about is like there's just a lot of people that are very creative and like love gaming. And I've talked to so many people that always like, I want to make a game, but I don't know how to code. And I think that I don't know how to code is just going to completely disappear here in the next year. So that's what we're really excited about and like want the Farcade to be this place where people get to express themselves and build things that maybe they've or they've wanted to build for years. And so that's the feeling that we got from Farworld, and we're trying to recreate with everybody with the Farcade.
So what's it like building with your brother? That's always, sort of like an interesting dynamic, I feel like. And also like given that you guys weren't like sort of you weren't always sort of technical, it sounds like you had to go back and go to coding
Yeah.
school and pick that up and didn't feel like you had the experience to make games. Like, is the harder part of this game building process for you sort of thinking through the design of the games and how exactly to build them, or is it actually just sort of like executing? Is AI making that easier? Like, what's the actual what are like the hardest parts of the creation process versus the parts that you feel like are a little bit easier?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, work to your first question, my brother. working with your brothers, like, I mean, starting businesses is very hard. It's a very emotional, it's a very stressful, it's a lot of ups and downs, like very, very high highs, very low lows. And so choosing business partners and founding people you're going to found business with is incredibly important. And the the best thing about working with my brother is, um, we're very direct. We don't need to like dance around each other's feelings. Like we not to like just say what we mean. But I also think there's like this other nice thing about being family, which is, we know we can't go too far. Like we both love each other more than we love any business that we would make, and so we know that like, uh, you can't ruin the relationship over a business decision. Like there's always a kind
Right.
of a point at which you're like, you know what, this isn't this like maybe we're both being too stubborn about something, or this is getting too heated, but like, it's just not worth it, like ruining our relationship over a business. But it is very good because we can be very honest, which is always it's pretty hard to do when you're starting it with friends and strangers and you're creating a business. It's a delicate balance being when you feel like the other person's making a bad decision, or you feel very opinionated about the direction of the company. Like it's just a really tense situation. So it's been very awesome, and I feel very grateful that we have that type of relationship and we've been able to build this together. Um, but for as far as the your second question, like the game design and this, I think the hardest part is just there's so much to build and there's so much that you're excited about doing, and you obviously have very limited time, and so it's just always like trying to pick and choose the best things to work on every week. And I think that's the hardest part for us. Is I think the game design, especially for like mini games, is actually like pretty easy. A lot of our stuff is that we're currently making is just like trying to adapt, really successful games and to rebuild them with our studio is mostly like templates and examples of like things that we want people to be able to do in the future. So like the game design mechanics is really the fun part, and you really get to be creative. But from like a business standpoint, yeah, we have such a great vision of like where we want the Farcade to be in a year from now, but there's a million ways to get there. So it's really just trying to find, uh, you know, we always have a laundry list of about 100 items, and so it's like, what's the top 10 this week that are really going to move the needle and keep things going?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense on the advantages of working with your brother. I've got a brother of my own. I've always like we haven't really found a big thing to work on together
Yeah,
yet, but I've always thought that would be awesome someday for all of the reasons you said and more. But and then in terms of the game development, that makes sense too. Obviously, I think there's 3 or 4 games in the Farcade right now, 4, I think.
yeah,
And
there's
then
four.
yeah, and then people can go and they can make their own. I actually haven't like played around with that yet, so I'm not really sure, what's in there, but I have played the existing games. Seem to have fallen into a bit of the tower blocks rabbit hole where I'm using all my tickets on that every day, and it's like oddly, like compulsive,
Yeah.
but a lot of fun. Broke a new high score today, so
Let's
uh,
go.
yeah, I don't want to brag too much, but it's pretty stoked about that. So yeah. So anyway, I guess maybe we can talk about can you give some of the like more quantitative stats on what's gone on so far? Because it's for me, it's kind of hard to comprehend almost. With like I know one of the stats I saw I think was like 100,000 people have played Farcade now. Maybe you can give us a sense for other relevant metrics as well as some of the
Yeah.
ones with Farworld that if you're comfortable sharing, just to sort of give a scale to these things, because it's really impressive given Farcaster or Warpcast itself isn't like gigantic. I
Mhm.
think correct me if I'm wrong if you know, but I think they're still marching towards 1 million users. I could be wrong about that, or like 1 million total signups all time. I think it's like 800,000 or 900,000. So anyway, go ahead with your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. The numbers. Well, so I'm looking at them right now. So we're about right around 150,000 users. In our basically like our first week. We've had over 600,000 games played. We have um yeah we so we've done really well on that standpoint. We've grown really fast. I think the really great thing with Warpcast is of the 150, we have like over almost 40,000 Farcaster users, which is really, really compelling because that's I mean we're getting like almost all of the users on Warpcast have created an account and like basically tried a game. Some are playing a lot more than others. But I think I'm really excited by the adoption that we got in Farcaster, especially since the Farcade, we really, something that we're really excited about with frames and really drew us to the frames is like, we know that we can get gamers, but like, can we get people who maybe don't even identify as gamers, but saw like this really compelling experience, like in their social media feed? Like, could we convert that person? And I think the numbers that we're seeing right now at the Farcade is like, yes, like, yeah, we can get a lot of people to at least try a game. And maybe they're not going to be like the diehard grind every game, but like, they might see a Words with Friends post, or they might see a Geo Crush game, or they might see like something that's like really interesting to them or visually interesting, and like they want to give it a try. And maybe you could convert someone who doesn't even identify as a gamer and now wants to play games. And so that's what I'm really excited and proud about, like what happened there. The other really cool thing that happened last week, which is probably like the coolest, most like proudest moment of like my professional career, is we were home for the holidays, and my older sister is like absolutely obsessed with Candy Crush, and we wanted to see if we could build a Candy Crush clone with her just using our AI studio and launch a game. And we were able to build Geo Crush in just under 4 hours, and we ended up launching that game just using AI prompts with my sister. We are kind of like holding her hand through the Farcade studio, and so she was able to build a clone of Candy Crush, launched it, and then within the first hour of the game being played, it already had a couple thousand people play it. It had, several thousand, yeah, like 7,000 people play and that report scores. And I thought that was just like such a cool moment, like a powerful moment for people who want to build games, which is like, it completely removed this like distribution discovery problem that she would have had she built a game, where it's like, yeah, it's one thing to be able to build a Candy Crush clone, but like, how do you get 10 people to try the game, let alone thousands? And she was able to get thousands of people trying a game within a few hours of us making it. So those are the numbers that from like this week that I'm really excited about. Was not only like the growth numbers are nice. I'm more excited by like retention numbers and like getting people to come back and play a lot more. And I'm also really excited by, this time to create games and time to like get people to play games. And soon when we start doing the on-chain stuff, like the time to monetization, like I really want people to be making a lot of money very quickly, because games just have shorter and shorter shelf life. And so being able to monetize your game quickly is going to be very important.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the sort of seemingly counterintuitive things about Farcade so far is that, it's built on like Farcaster's, deeply integrated, and it's, this is all like large, most people on Farcaster at least are crypto familiar, if not crypto native. Yeah. And yet, at launch, there's not really like monetary components involved with these games. They're just for fun. But there is, sort of hints that that's coming through like sort of, I mean, you could talk about it more, but basically on the homepage, it's sort of like, these games are going to have market caps. And I was just like, wait, what? So that was like kind of cool to see. And I don't know, how much of, any plans you can share on that, but clearly there is monetization, in the near future here.
Yeah, like monetization is such a big thing for us. Like monetization for creators is really important, especially like especially for gaming. Like gaming is a notoriously hard uh space to monetize in. There's very few games make money, like especially in Web 2. I think there's something like I think it's something like less than 5% of games launched on Steam ever break even. And so like even fewer actually make money. And like it's just really hard. It's really hard to monetize games. There's just a lot of people making them. It's a lot of attention. And traditional mobile games, the big ones, spend tens of millions of dollars a month on marketing to try and get, a handful of people to spend money. And so it's monetization is very important for us. And we believe like Web3 just unlocks paths to monetization that are so much more interesting than Web 2, especially when you start introducing staking and ownership and trading, which is all stuff that we want to pursue. And that's definitely like the meta right now, with the the clankers and the pumps and all the funds that are the dot funds that are everywhere. So we want to bring some flavor of that to our platform, but we still always want the focus to be around playing fun games. And if we can add really interesting monetization paths and potentially ownership paths, like, we think that's going to really kick off a flywheel that's going to be really, really compelling. So it's the probably the highest thing on our list that we're working on right now. But we do have basically an order of operations of things that we want to launch before we launch that stuff. So that's the thing we want to get. That's the thing we're most excited about. But we think there's a couple of things we want to get done before that, before we start launching all the monetization features.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, you might be most excited about it, but it still might not be necessarily the right time right now. Like, there might be some things that make sense to have before that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. And related to that, you mentioned earlier, like, sort of the hardest part has been just prioritizing, basically. Like, there's so much that you want to build and so little time, and you have to prioritize one thing over the next. How did you, like, what do you view as, the first, like, few core things that were sort of prerequisites to launch? Because there's actually, like, sort of a lot, if you get down into, like, sort of the nitty gritty, there's a lot of things included in, like, the V1, the launch version of Farcade, that, like, didn't have to necessarily be included. Like, you guys didn't just launch, like, I think if you compare it, for example, to, something like Clanker, obviously, nothing against those guys at all. It's an awesome product. I've been able to have both Proxy and Dish on this podcast as well, and
Nice.
love what they're doing. But, like, their V1 was, like, pretty clearly like a V1. There's the website was, like, pretty blank. There wasn't a whole lot to it, but obviously there was enough, and the core interesting piece was there, and so it took off like wildfire, and has been very interesting to follow along since then. And obviously they've worked really hard to launch things post launch. V2
Yeah.
contract, I think V3 contract, maybe even stuff like that. So it's, like, very much sort of like a launch and iterate. And obviously you guys are taking that approach as well. But I feel like your minimum threshold to launch was, had more sort of nice bells and whistles to it. It was pretty complete feeling, even if there's, like, sort of future features upcoming and monetization and all of these things. Like, there was already a lot. So how did you think about sort of what needed to be in that initial package? Like, what were the most important things? For example, just even the ability to build your own game, or submit your own game. Like, that certainly didn't need to be in, like, sort of the launch version, but not certainly didn't need to be, but, like, you could have chose not to include that, and yet you did. So I'm curious, like, how you chose what to bake into the original version, and are prioritizing what's coming.
I mean, it's always such an interesting question, because projects launch at such varying degrees of, like, polish and feature sets, like, and anyone can be successful with any varying degree. Like, some apps are incredibly polished and have tons of features and animation, like, they have everything at launch, and they do really well, or they flop. And then you have things like Clanker, which like you said, is very clearly a V1 and just takes off like a rocket ship. And I think Virtuals is a little bit the same way as well. I think, like, Virtuals is done incredibly well, and I think a lot of their stuff is, like, I think, like, pretty clearly, like, barely a V1 as well. A lot of their stuff is just allowing people to bet on AI agents and stuff like that. But it's they've built a ton since they've blown up. But I think when they first launched in October, the site was everything they were building was pretty minimal. But so I think for us, so the studio isn't public, and so the studio is just an internal tool that we're using that everyone will get to use at some point. So that was one of the decisions. Like, we thought we wanted to go live with it, but that was one of those things where we thought it would be much better, or much more exciting, if you were a builder, to know that we have hundreds of thousands of people playing in the Farcade. It's way more exciting to go build a game on that platform than it is to build a game on, like, a platform that might have 100,000 gamers, and we just need games. So we knew when we were building it that we were probably going to have to build the first handful of games, and that the best way to attract more developers would to be have a platform with a lot of people already on it. And so we basically decided just to we put a pin in polishing the studio, and we just, it has its rough edges that we can work around internally, and we're using that to launch our games. So we decided to basically think about, what's going to kick off the biggest flywheels for our business, and like what's going to get the people the most excited. And none of the farcade works without gamers. Like none of it works without people playing games. And so that's what we decided to focus on, was like, what is the best way to get a bunch of people playing games? And so we really focused on like a fun onboarding experience. We focused on like a couple of games that we thought were really fun, ways to share and compete against each other and challenge friends. So we really focused on like the social fun features, and trying to get people excited to play games with each other. And now we have basically like an internal goal of launching a new game at least once a week. So we want to try and launch a new game every week. And then hopefully, as we just keep building this out, hopefully we're getting to a new game every day or every couple days. And then once we open it up, that's when you start seeing a tremendous amount of more games, and you start seeing the things like the TikTok feed and that stuff really coming to life, because there's just so much more content and gaming to consume. And so that was a lot of our thought process was, what's the most important thing for us was we wanted people playing games. And so we kind of reversed the feature set from there. Not really what we wanted to be like the final set of features, but what's gonna be the most important features we need now to start getting people excited about the Farcade and start playing in there.
Was it challenging to pick the first few games, or did you sort of have these few in mind from the get-go?
Super challenging. We had about 10 games like half baked, and it was a good internal debate over what games would be the most compelling. And so yeah, so it was a lot of internal it's so hard. A really hard thing about building games you don't realize until you do it. Um is how impossible it is to tell if they're fun or not. Like you cannot tell if a game is fun when you play it and you're the one building it, because you just have to test it so much, and you build it and you
Right.
tinker with it, and it's like you
It's not going to
cannot
be
tell.
fun. It's not going to be
Yeah,
fun anymore when you're done with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so you have no idea if you're making a fun game anymore. You're like, people might like this, but I don't like it anymore, so I don't know. Like I'm so over this game. And uh so it's really hard. So you end up having like these like pretty interesting debates. So I'm really happy with what we settled on. We settled on for a mix of, existing well-known games, games that are open source, and then games that are entirely built that are very new. And so we wanted to like kind of show off a little bit of a range of like what's going to be available and being built in the Farcade. And so we have like some more 3D games, and we have some more traditional games coming. So we're really trying to create a blend, but we're also trying to lay the groundwork, or a nice framework for people who want to come build later, to like basically have all these templates and examples of like what worked, what didn't work, and like what's exciting.
Yeah, and how do you think about mobile versus web? Like I think two of the three games are probably as good or better on mobile versus web, and one of them is like probably a little worse on
Yeah.
mobile. I don't know if you would agree with that, but did you think about, optimizing these games for mobile, or do you care about web even at all? Like, how do you think about that?
We want things to work on web, but we are super focused on mobile. The Geo Wars game is definitely the hardest one on mobile, and again, I think Geo Wars was much more of a that's the kind of asteroid shooter looking one.
Yeah,
That one's hard on mobile. That's just a hard game in general. I think even on desktop it's hard.
yeah,
Um, but it's yeah, that one I was really excited about, because that one was built with just, I think it's like 12 AI prompts. Like I think it was literally 12 prompts to build that entire game. All the art, all the scoring, all the bullets, like all the physics, all of that was built within just 12 AI prompts. Like you're talking to ChatGPT, just saying it all started with, I want an asteroid like Geometry Wars shooter. And within, 10 more prompts and about 45 minutes, we had a game that looked basically like how Geo Wars looks. And so that was what's really exciting about that game, was just like how I think how cool it is and how visually fun it is. for a mobile game, but it's definitely a hard game. But we're very focused on mobile. We think that's like we just love mobile gaming, and especially, I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia this last year, and just all of that market is Android mobile gaming. Like everyone just only plays games on their phones, and that's just a market we really want to be in. Like the farcade, it's just a market that lends itself really well to hyper casual mobile gaming. So that's what we want to focus on.
And do you have a sense for why the like Geo Wars might have been so efficient in terms of the build, like 12 prompts? It seems like as or more complex as the other games,
Yeah,
roughly. And so like, was it a matter of like more effective prompting on your part, or maybe it was like the third one you built, or more? I mean, I'm sure you've done more than just the three. So
yeah.
like maybe it was like later on in the process and you're getting better at this, or the system that you've built for the game making is getting better. Like, is there any rhyme or reason as to why that was so relatively quick and easy, or it's kind of hard to tell?
It's a really good question. I mean, prompting is definitely like an art form. Like there's definitely like uh prompting is very there's a lot of tricks to prompting. And so I think that was a lot of it, is like knowing the tricks of like how to prompt an AI better. Uh I think the AI models have just gotten so good. Like I think that's like the other big leap in technology. And that's like a lot of how Farcade got made originally. Is Farcade was um not so much on the it's not really that much of an AI product until we were really just focusing on making hyper casual games, and we were trying to build tools to make it faster for us to make games. And when we did that, we realized like this tool we were building, the studio, could really be opened up and allow anyone to start doing this. And that was just like a light bulb moment for us of just like, we couldn't believe once we started trying to build games from scratch with our studio, like just how quickly and how well it worked. And so that's was for us, we were like, this is insane. Like these models are just getting so impressive. And so yeah, I think it's a combination of, just the ecosystem of AI tooling getting a lot better and a lot more mature. And then us having built a handful before, just knowing how to prompt AIs better, because yeah, and there's definitely tricks to it, but I think knowing those tricks is going to become less and less valuable, because I think these models are just going to get better and better. And so that's what I'm excited about with the studio too, is it really is going to take advantage of any of these leap forwards in, AI models and these really cool LLMs that are just getting so sophisticated so quickly. We really get to take advantage of any big leap forward. And so, we're seeing a lot of these like 2D style games, but the 3D games will be coming, because AI engines are going to be just as good at making these, fully fledged systems like pretty quickly.
Do you think that as it gets easier for people to make games and as you guys open that up, like, do you have, I mean, this is like a down the road issue, so maybe it's not really that relevant yet, but like thoughts on sort of like screening games, like, are you going to just like let anything get posted and it gets played on its merit, or are you going to sort of like carefully curate some of these games and just like having the manpower to do that, or
Yeah.
decentralizing that review, just in some way? Like, have you thought about stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a super good question, Jake. And I think like I think I think this is one of those decisions where like I think you could do it anyway, either way, and I think both could work. For us, I think we want it to be very open and decentralized is like the goal. But the North Star is, ideally you're just publishing, like, when you're creating these games, you're literally just, the way we want them to work is you're basically just minting the NFT and publishing these games, like the game code on IPFS, and then like that game now operates in the Farcade, and like there's no central, we're not a custodian. Anyone can just build and publish games, and they basically just stand on their own merit, and people are find and discover these games and play them. So that's like the North Star, is that like we're not a central custodian of any of this stuff, and it's like a completely open and free arcade network. However, I think I think the downside of that is like a really the odds of having a poor onboarding experience or like a bad experience as a first time user is very high when you open things up too early. Like the odds that you're playing a good game when anyone can just publish anything is like very low. And
Right.
we saw this with frames, and this is actually one of the first iterations of Farcade was anyone publishing a frame would basically show up in the Farcade and you could play it. And when we're building these first designs, we're like, like 60% or 70% of the frames just like don't work and they're broken and it's like a terrible experience for a user. And so for us, I think we want to go the curation route at the start and find great builders and people who are really excited to launch games and curate, what games we think that are very good at the start. But ideally it just becomes more and more open. And then when you have enough of like a critical mass of good games, ideally, if you're making bad games, they just never really get off the ground. They never really get discovered because they just weren't of high quality. So most users were never impacted because they're almost only just seeing good games.
Yeah, I think that seems like a good approach. I'd rather have a little bit too slow of like sort of an opening of the platform and have a great experience for
Yeah,
for myself going on there, for new people trying it out. Like you want the probability of playing a game that you enjoy to be really high, and that's going to be even slimmer than the probability of playing like an objectively good game, like because you might not enjoy all of them. So it's like
yeah.
probably curating pretty
It's
pretty you know with a high threshold to start kind of makes sense.
yeah. You can think of it almost like a Coinbase approach to like listing tokens. It's like, yeah, there's potentially like there's room to be like a Uniswap or a DEX where like you can like buy or trade any coin that's ever been created, or there's like if you want to try and match like the UI UX of something like Coinbase, like you just need to have a little bit more curation at the start. So I think that's kind of how we're thinking about it at the start, especially yeah, like I said, just with games. Games are um we just are very focused on that first user experience right now, and so the games just have to be good, and so unfortunately that just requires a little bit more curation on the onset for right now.
Yeah. So quick sort of like logistical question or like another sort of metrics one, just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. What's the like do you have the approximate split of where people are playing, like in terms of mobile versus web? I think I actually didn't realize. I thought it was like a Farcaster only thing, but it sounds like are people also playing outside of Farcaster?
Yeah, so we're on Telegram. This is where it's on Telegram, Farcaster, and we're about to launch our third ecosystem, which is going to be on WorldCoin. So we're going to launch that
Interesting.
probably today.
How did you
Um,
decide on those three platforms?
um, so the three platform, well, so Farcaster was like the very obvious choice of, that's just where we love building. I think that's like where the stuff is most interesting. Building on top of an open social network is super fun. Frames being embedded in like a social post is also like a perfect fit for what we're trying to build. But we're just really excited about building on top of this, like, there's kind of this like mini app or this like, they're called frames and Warpcaster mini apps and Telegram. WorldCoin has a mini app architecture. Um, there's just a lot of these really apps that have giant networks that are like really opening the doors. And so this is kind of a callback to like early Zanga days on Facebook with like Farmville, where we want to build on top of these existing social networks. And we also think it's a very compelling tool that like, you and I could be playing against each other in the Farcade, and I could be on Telegram and you can be on Farcaster. And I think there's like this really cool future where everyone's playing with each other across like this like mini app ecosystem. And so that's something that we're really excited about. And I think for us, it's just all about tapping into like existing distribution discovery platforms. And so we want to be where users are spending a lot of their time, and users spend a lot of their time on Warpcast. They spend a lot of their time on Telegram, and now they can, be playing the Farcade within those tools.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm not sure how like unique this is. Like it's not something I'm really familiar with. Like most people I know who are like, building V2 frames or mini apps on Warpcast or Farcaster are are just sort of building there. And I'm not sure like if people, WorldCoin, my guess would be it's like sort of even, less popular than Farc. I know they have like a lot of, they've sort of got a lot of people into WorldCoin, but I don't know how many people are like regularly using the app
Yeah.
versus Farcaster or anything. Telegram's obviously pretty popular, but is this sort of like cross-platform mini app concept something that has already been popularized by apps, or are you guys trying to be like
Not
one of the first to do that?
not that I'm aware of. We're pretty sure we're the first big one. I've not seen anyone else do this. I'd be very curious to see if anyone else is doing this. I've not seen it, so I'm pretty sure we're the first people doing this, and especially we'll be doing it at the scale at which we're doing it. Because like we have um yeah, we have WorldCoin coming, we have Discord coming, and then we have one other one that I can't talk about that's coming. So yeah, so we're doing something that I haven't seen anyone else doing, and something that really hasn't been possible until very recently. So I think that's like what I'm excited, like most excited about with a lot of the stuff we're doing with the Farcade is like a lot of this stuff just like really wasn't possible even just a few months ago. Like a lot of people didn't have mini apps. Like Telegram was really the only person doing it. Like Frames V2 didn't exist. WorldCoin was didn't really exist yet, and their like app store ecosystem didn't exist. Like the Farcade Studio with like the AI tools, like the AI wasn't good enough to make games even just 6 months ago. Like this stuff is like just starting to get this good, like as of very recently. So we're really trying to tap into like these really big tailwinds that we see are forming in this like current environment, which is like the rise of mini apps, the speed at which AI is improving, and just tapping into I think some really cool stuff that's being built just across Web3 and crypto. And also to your earlier question, so it looks like we have about an 80-20 split mobile to desktop for users.
Okay. And how about platforms? Do you have that?
60% Android, 40% iOS.
Between Farcaster and like Telegram though?
It is about it's almost a 60-40 split on usage. With we have more Telegram users signed up, but as far as people playing games, we have more. It's about 60-40 daily active users of Telegram to Warpcast.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great name by the way, and it's like interesting because it works. I mean, it's like very clearly Farcaster first, Farcaster native sort of thing, but
Yeah.
I don't think people like, think twice about it on like a Telegram, like Farcade. It just kind of sounds cool and good, and it's just like Farcade. So,
Yeah.
so that's great, and it's really interesting. I wasn't aware of a lot of this prior to our conversation. I was just aware of what was going on like within the confines of Farcaster. Is there a risk from your perspective? Like to your point, a lot of this has come together. It's like you have a great answer for like the why now question, basically, on
Yeah.
like several different dimensions. And one of the things I'm thinking about is like if right now these apps have sort of all aligned on like, okay, we're going to make like mini apps a thing. What happens if Farcaster, goes further in some direction? Like obviously it's more, I mean, I guess WorldCoin is also, crypto forward, crypto first.
Yeah.
I don't know, like basically if these like, and, Telegram sort of being the least of the three, but obviously a lot of people, I don't actually know, I don't use Telegram like that much, but people
Yeah.
obviously within crypto are using Telegram. I just don't know if they're using it in crypto
Yeah.
first ways quite as much, but, um, what's like, is there a risk that these platforms develop in different directions where you have to make choices like at the Farcade level to sort of maintain consistency across platforms, or could Farcade itself like develop somewhat differently depending on the platform that people are playing? Like I don't know if that's the right question
Yeah.
necessarily, but like how do you think about that like sort of bucket of things?
Yeah, super good question. I think that's why basically it's why we haven't launched on Discord yet. Discord definitely has like more. It's like it's not quite it can't quite be the same product just because of the way like their games are called activities or they're like mini apps basically. So uh those are different enough in how like their architecture works that we can't really just like tap into it as easily as we're able to tap into these other ones. So yeah, it's definitely a thing that we look at when we're looking at these new ecosystems, like how easily does like the Farcade currently tap into like how their mini apps ecosystem works. And then it's something that we think about a lot too, which is like, what if they do the Facebook route and they decide to close down the doors or make things more restrictive and like and so that's a lot of why we're excited by like the Web3 monetization components, and you see like the market cap and the tokenization is like we we're really excited by trying to build as much value as we can into like the Farcade network versus like just an individual mini app. And like, and if we can convert users into being, stakeholders or you know, participating in ownership and trading of these games and the ecosystem as a whole, um, their ability, like our ability to hold on to those users is much higher, regardless of like, maybe Telegram mini apps don't work. And so we have to start converting people to like maybe our native mobile app or Farcaster. We think that conversion is going to be a ton higher if you have people as like stakeholders in your, what you're building, which is why we're really excited with like the Web3 on ramps and monetization stuff. So that's what we're really focused on is right now, the short term is tap into like what's similar, what works, and what we can launch really quickly. Um, and then, start building value in something that feels defensible. Because, a lot of the tech stuff, like even the Farcade Studio with the AI tools, like in the long run, I think the studio could be a great tool, but I also think there could be a potential where people are just using one of X number of other tools to help launch their game into the Farcade. And the Farcade really is just a distribution discovery platform, very much like how Steam is for games, where people can build it on Unreal or Unity, but you always launch your game on Steam. And so hopefully the Farcade can be that for mobile games.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's just very interesting how sort of interoperable this is from the get-go. And I'm curious if it will
Yeah.
be able to sort of maintain that, if that, if that's going to depend on these platforms developing in somewhat similar directions, which they very well may. Like with, you're not talking about like the entire platforms, you know, uh, moving like somewhat like sort of moving towards the same ultimate end game. You're just talking about sort of like one piece, which granted it might be a big piece, but like it's this mini apps piece that sort of needs to continue developing somewhat similarly on like somewhat similar, infrastructure or whatever that makes it sensible to like continue building the same, Farcade across all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
How did you think about like, obviously like it's sort of given the 60-40 split with Farcaster and Telegram, this wasn't something that like I might have guessed out of the gates that if you were to launch it, on both platforms, that the split would probably be like 80-20 or 90-10 in like one direction or the other, just because like the likelihood would be that it would, probably wouldn't do exactly the same on both platforms. But it kind of did, like not exactly obviously, but like it did comparably well on both, which is even more sort of surprising. Like given, I think if you had told me like, okay, it's going to do nothing against like Farcade or anything, but just with any product, like you tell me you're going to launch on Farcaster and you're going to launch on Telegram, and you're going to tell me that they're going to approximately like sort of perform the same across both, my guess would be that it didn't do well on either. But in this case, like it did well, like very well on both. And it's like
Yeah.
somewhat surprising. And like obviously, and again, not because of the game itself, just in general, given like how the average launch goes, I think that's a very sort of unusual outcome. And obviously some of it is, credit to the game and some of like the social elements that you built into it. Are there other elements that had to do with like, outside of the game, the way that you launched it or anything like that, that you think played a factor on either platform, or was it mostly intrinsic to the game?
Yeah. I mean, it's another really good question. I think uh I follow this guy, you might know him, Nikita Beer, who does like he's seems to be one of the only humans that can actually recreate viral apps. Like
Right.
he seems to have cracked the code pretty well. One of the things that he said that really focused on was like onboarding and um so they're like having a great onboarding flow and the key components of a good onboarding flow is obviously like a great experience, like as little content as possible, like get people into your app and create an incentive to share. Like one of the biggest things that I love about the Farcade is it's not that hard to build something that's incentive to share, which is like because people love sharing gaming. People love sharing, like, we just talked about how you just got your new high score in tower blocks. Like people like sharing like these moments. Like we're very gaming is like a weirdly very social thing. Like we love having conversations about games. We love like talking about scores. We love talking about, IP from games. And so the thing that we thought about a lot was when someone gets to the end of their experience, like are are we giving them things that they're going to want to share with their friends or like onboard their community? And so I think that's how we got a lot of success with Warpcast and Farcaster was we created this, like, I thought a pretty fun onboarding experience where people shared their early access pass. People use this early access pass to onboard their friends. And then people had really easy ability to like share their high scores and invite and challenge friends. And so it grew really fast because I think it just was a fun thing to share. Like it's fun to share your scores. It's fun to challenge people. And so I think that did really well. And Telegram has been really wild because on Warpcast we had me and my brother have a much bigger following than we do on other networks, and we had a community already built in, and so we felt like we knew how to get something to go a little viral on Warpcast. But with Telegram, we're like, we can share this in a couple of groups, but I don't know how we're going to get any users. And the fact that it's grown as much as it has, we've only shared it with like a couple of groups with a few friends, and it's basically grown just based on that same incentive to share completely within Telegram. So that's been pretty crazy to see because it was Telegram's a little bit harder to create like viral moments around because it's just a chat app. So it seems to be doing really well just because again, I think people like sharing gaming. And so that's something that we're trying to lean into as much as we can.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that bodes well for, I'm not sure again how like the mini apps are built into WorldCoin, but with Discord or maybe some others in the future, like this ability for Farcade to sort of go viral without, even if it's something that's not really conducive to having apps go viral, just because it's just chats, like, or servers in Discord's case, like whatever. I think that bodes pretty well. And it's, it makes sense on the Farcaster side, the sort of approach that you guys took and the Nikita beer style stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely like why we're most excited by like you said, we're definitely feel like we're a Farcaster first because we just feel like it's easier to create like the more fun stuff. Like we want to create like, time gated, like, come get the next high score in like the next 30 minutes. Like whoever gets a high score gets like this NFT or these tokens or these points or whatever. Like it's really fun to like come up with these like group or time gated or like these games that involve interactions on a social media platform. So like being on top of Farcaster just makes that so much more fun because you can create these like really like viral social things. Like we're just always like really trying to create these like social moments. And so we're definitely most excited by Farcaster because like Telegram's great because it has tons of users and I think it's a really well made application and mini apps are doing well there. But I think Farcaster's gonna be like where the most fun Farcade experiences are happening.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we've just kind of started a new chapter with Farcaster. I've been on there for a little over 2 years, and obviously Frames in the first place was sort of a new, upgrade for the experience. And then you had other metas like tipping, and then obviously more recently like token launching and whatnot. But I feel like mini apps, I mean, they're now basically what's now basically Frames V2 or the Warpcast like Frames Explore page, all of that sort of combined, this ability to have like full experiences not confined to what you were previously able to do with Frames V1, to me just seems like a huge level up that we're obviously like sort of only seeing the very early stages of so far.
Totally.
But to your point, earlier, it's an awesome time to be building what you're building. So I know we are coming up on time here, but is there anything else that sort of comes to mind that, we haven't touched on that's been, top of mind for you lately or that people can, keep an eye out for or just sort of anything else as we close?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I just could not be more excited and like grateful for the response we've got. And thank you so much for having me on, Jake. It's really fun to get to take a break from coding as fast as I can to get to talk about what we're doing. And it's we're super excited, and I do think like we're really passionate about where we're going. We think we have a really great roadmap for 2025, and um, you know, I think we're very we're just very grateful for everyone that's participated, and we really hope that um, people want to stick around to see everything that's coming over the next few months because we think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We think everything we've built right now is really cool. We think like it's like just only gonna get more interesting and more fun and more exciting. So definitely encouraging people to stick around, continue to check us out and play these games because we're very excited about what the direction. We're very excited about rewarding people that are early adopters and early supporters. We definitely want to reward people that are help building something that we think is going to be a very big platform in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure having this conversation. I am ultra bullish on Farcade and rooting for you and your brother. So hopefully we can do this again at some point in the future. But looking forward to seeing what
Oh,
Farcade's got in store for the new year.
yeah, would love to. I'll be walking next time too. Then I'll just be giga brain combo once I'm walking. So thanks so much,
Awesome.
Jake. I really appreciate it, man.
Love it. All right. Thank you, man. Have a happy new year.
Yeah, you too. Take care.